breaking news tonight. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz has extended the stay-at-home order up until May 4th. May the 4th be with you, Minnesota. We start tonight with this. Look, right now, with everything going on in the world, you should be questioning everything. And I mean everything, including what I'm about to say to you right now. That's the subject of tonight's point of view. I'm going to give you just two examples tonight of why you need to be questioning everything that you are seeing right now. Now, let's take a look at March 25th. This is when Minnesota Governor Tim Walz announced his initial stay-at-home order. See if you remember this.
If we just let this thing run its course and did nothing, upwards of 74,000 Minnesotans could be killed by this.
Folks, he just said that 74,000 Minnesotans could be killed. That's if, Minnesota did nothing. Clearly they're doing that. But here's my question for you. Is anybody asking him, how in the world did you come up with 74,000? Where did you get that number from, and who determined what data was actually going into the model to say, hey, we could lose 74,000 Minnesotans? Now, here's what you need to know. He got that model that was from a place that was created by the University of Minnesota and the Minnesota Department of Health. Again, tonight, question everything. Ask questions. Let me ask you this. Here's some questions to think about. Who funds the University of Minnesota? Who paid for this model that's creating all this data? That would be you, the taxpayers, by the way. How much did this model cost that's being created out of the University of Minnesota? And also, why isn't Minnesota using the same models or the IHME models like the rest of the country is using, including the White House, especially when they're making executive stay-at-home order decisions that are really decimating the economy? Now, to be fair, the numbers could be completely accurate. The problem is we don't know. You're the taxpayer paying for this model, giving the governor the data that he's using and the power to do an executive stay-at-home order that is cratering your economy right now, and yet you don't really know what the data is that's driving these kind of decisions. I asked Minnesota State Senator and Dr. Scott Jensen last night on Point of View about this. Here's some of our exchange. Have you yet seen the information that's going into these U of M models that the governor is using to make these decisions?
No, we have not. We have asked for those, and we were told by the governor's office that we would receive the data tonight. And so we're hoping to see what the assumptions are and what the data is. But at this point in time, we have not.
So I reached back out to Senator Jensen today to see if he'd seen any of the data for the models yet. He still has not gotten the information. He is a Minnesota state senator and a doctor, still no data. So the state of Minnesota, guys, you're allowing the governor to basically shut down your state, your life, your businesses, and yet you haven't seen the data that's actually driving his decisions. Please question everything. By the way, we here at Valley News Live have filed open records requests to the governor's office to get this information for you. We'll let you know if and when we get it. Also, from Minnesota Governor Tim Walz's presser today, Minneapolis reporter Tom Hauser tweeted this. I remember, 74,000. Here's what he tweeted out. Minnesota Health Commissioner Jan Malcolm says the Minnesota projection model now shows 6,000 to 20,000 deaths in Minnesota. We just shaved off 54 there. She acknowledges other models show far fewer. In fact, the University of Washington model, the one we just talked about, the IMHE model, shows 456 deaths in Minnesota by August 4th. 456, 74,000. Question everything. Also on last night's show, Senator and Dr. Jensen said something that has now been seen on social media. Listen to this, folks. The interview I did with him last night has now been seen on social media well over 500,000 times. And what came up in this conversation is the fact that the Minnesota Department of Health is inflating the number of COVID deaths. Please listen closely to this exchange I had with Senator Jensen on last night's show. What you just said, I think, is critically important. Can you repeat what you just said, please?
Well, last Friday, I received a 7-page document that sort of told me that if I had an 86-year-old patient that had pneumonia but was never tested for COVID-19, but sometime after she came down with pneumonia, we learned that she had been exposed to her son who had no symptoms but later on was identified with COVID-19, that it would be appropriate to diagnose on the death certificate COVID-19. Now, we've not done that. If someone has the pneumonia after and it's in the middle of a flu epidemic, and I don't have a test on influenza, I don't diagnose influenza on the death certificate. I will say this elderly patient died of pneumonia.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but my heart is sinking right now as you're telling me this. You're a doctor. Why in the world would they be sending you out information to fill out death certificates, whether the person's been diagnosed with COVID-19 or not, but then to say in the death certificate this person's death was caused by COVID-19? That does not sound right to me.
I went to the person in our office who does most of the death certificates over the last 10, 20 years, and I said, does this sound right? I had her look at the documents that I printed off, and she said, well, we've always been told that you always put down just facts. You don't put down any probabilities. You don't put any presumptions down. It's just what you know. And so this is concerning, and it actually gets to your point, Chris. When we start talking about the data that goes into the modeling, we have to ask ourselves a question. Are we being forthright? Are we sharing with the public? Minnesota, North Dakota, we don't need to be having it sugar-coated. We want to know what's going into your modeling.
So with that being said, why would they want to skew the number of deaths due to COVID-19?
Well, fear is a great way to control people, and I worry about that. I worry that sometimes we're so darn interested in just jazzing up the fear factor that, sometimes people's ability to think for themselves is paralyzed if they're frightened enough.
What he just said there, folks, is spot on. That's why I'm asking you, I'm encouraging you, I'm challenging you tonight. Question everything. With what's happening right now, there's a lot of fear and trepidation. I get that, but it does impact our ability to think critically. He just said, hey, one of the reasons that they're inflating COVID-19 deaths, the possibility, is fear, as he just said. But I want to ask you this. Why do you at home think they're inflating the number of COVID deaths in Minnesota? I've been asking a lot of people that question today. One of the things that we've also been talking about is, hey, do states maybe get more federal dollars if they label a death as a COVID death now? Because, again, this is an emergency. I did reach out to Senator Kramer and Congressman Armstrong's office earlier today to find out more about the CARES Act. That was the $2 trillion bill they passed for this COVID emergency situation. I have not heard back from them yet. But then I did some research and found this on the Kaiser Family Foundation website, thanks to Tori as well. I'm going to read this for you. It might be a little bit hard for you to see at home, but I'm going to read for you what it says here about $100 billion for hospitals, that it's in the CARES Act. Please listen closely. The $2 trillion Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security CARES Act contains a vast array of spending provisions, including an additional $100 billion for the Public Health and Social Services Emergency Fund. The new funding is designed to provide an influx of money to hospitals and other healthcare entities responding to the coronavirus pandemic. This $100 billion averages out to about $108,000 per hospital bed in the United States. It goes on to say nonprofit and for-profit hospitals may be eligible for funds, and potentially other entities may receive funding if they diagnose, test, or provide care for COVID-19 patients. It's a possibility. Also, I was going to wrap this up myself, but I love what Senator Jensen said at the very end of the bit I was playing for you there earlier. Here's how he finished it.
And that's not where I want people to be. I want people to say, we're going to get through this. I'm going to use my head. I'm going to go to different sources. I'm going to listen to different sources. And I'm going to think for myself, because that's what America's about.
Amen to that, my friends. Folks, those are just two examples I want to share with you as why you need to be questioning everything that you're seeing right now. Again, all of it could be accurate. I'm just asking you to think critically and question everything, and that's tonight's point of view. Would love to know your